Hello there and welcome to the Q&A show. My name is Cyrus Fernando and I'm here every Monday evening here to take your questions. This is a very special program this evening because we've got a very special guest on the line with us tonight. We're joined by Dr. Grady McMurtry, all the way in Florida hometown. How are you doing, Grady?
Doing great. Good to see you tonight.
Good to see you tonight as well, Dr. Grady. I'm going to start with my first article, and I think you might quite like it, and we'll get your thoughts on it in a second. But I want to remind our viewers that we are live and interactive, so please feel free for the next exactly 57 minutes of the program to go. Email us live@revelationtv.com. SMS details are on screen. Email us. Maybe you've never emailed before into a live program or never emailed this program before. Well, tell us and write to us. Write your questions to Dr. Grady, creation scientist and lifelong member of Mensa as well. And we'd love to hear from you this evening. So, Dr. Grady, here's a topic, and I'm going to get your thoughts in a second. And here it is. So it says, Trump credits God for election victory. Christians are reacting towards Donald Trump's victory in the US presidential elections. In the early hours of Wednesday, the 6th of November, 2024, Trump told ecstatic supporters at his election party in Florida that he had won an unprecedented and powerful mandate. He was joined on stage by his family running mate JD Vance and UFC boss Dana White. Billionaire supporter Elon Musk was also in the audience. Trump said, "This was, I believe, the greatest political movement of all time. And now it's going to reach a new level of importance because we're going to help our country heal. We made history for a reason tonight," he said. And he said, "Every single day I will be fighting for you. This is a magnificent victory for the American people that will allow us to make America great again." Mr. Vance called Trump's performance in the US election the greatest political comeback in history of the United States. Referencing recent unsuccessful assassination attempts, Mr. Trump suggested that there was a hand of God in his win. Trump told the audience, "Many people told me that God spared my life for a reason. And that reason was to save our country and to restore America to greatness. And we are going to fulfill that mission together." The Washington Post poll found 56% of the majority of Catholics and 62% of Protestant and other Christians voted for Trump. So, initial reaction, Dr. Grady, you did mention and you did say you believe that Trump would win the election. Tell us about what's your initial reaction to this? Tell us.
Well, I think those of us who are Christian conservatives are just ecstatic. And we certainly do believe that God preserved his life twice, not just once. We certainly believe that God's hand was in the election. Trump actually won every, quote, swing state, the 7 states that can go either Democratic or Republican in terms of party affiliation. And so, yes, I think it was a miraculous victory in many ways. And when you take a look at the totals in the Electoral College, it just gets better every day, practically. We have the Senate, and it appears that we're going to have the House as well. And it's a rare occasion when all 3 of the House, Senate, and the White House are in Republican Party hands. The question is, what can we do with it in the next 100 days after he gets inaugurated? So we have to look at February, March, and April.
Can you just explain to our viewers how the purpose or the function of what the Senate actually means and how that works, and also House of Representatives, how important is that as well, and how important is it that it's been taken over by the Republicans?
Well, we have had the House the last few years. However, we didn't have the Senate. We didn't have the White House. Now, the House is the representative body of over 450 representatives that are elected for 2-year terms. So that kind of leadership can change very fast because 2-year reaction time. In essence, people in the House are running for their next election as soon as they get elected. Whereas in the, so to speak, senior House, which is the Senate, they face election once every 6 years. And there's only the 100 of them. And so it's a slower body in terms of turnover, but very powerful because our Constitution says that budget comes from the people's house, the representatives in the House of Representatives. But other things are for the Senate. They're really the counselor to the president when it comes to things like Supreme Court appointees and other things. And of course, the two of them all vote on bills. And there has to be a passage by both houses before a president can sign something into law. So we're looking forward to 4 more years of what we had when Trump was in office the first time, plus the fact that he now has the learning experience. He can sort out the people that really are going to do the job versus those that aren't. We had some very unfortunate choices in his first term, but he learned from that. And I would also say that, in my personal opinion, obviously he doesn't confide in me. I think that his personal position with Christianity has become far stronger than it was 40 years ago.
I was going to ask you basically about, obviously in the United Kingdom, when the Prime Minister is in power and they try and put certain legislations through, whereas in the US, so let's say, for example, President Trump wants to change the policies on the migrant situation in the US. So what would be that process for that legislation to actually go through?
Well, first of all, there are things that he can do just as he did, and just as Biden undid through executive orders. The president is the chief executive of the entire country, and he can do executive orders. And of course, he came out with executive orders originally against illegal immigration. Biden absolutely blew the doors open to anybody and everything, and it's been disastrous. So, of course, again, Trump will try to put those back in effect immediately. But what we really need is permanence. And the only way you can get the permanent adjustments is through the legislature. And so while he will do things with executive orders, he needs to get the legislature to start passing laws to make it permanent.
Joan's written in to say, good evening, Cy and Dr. Grady. Prophecy says Trump will be the last president. Does that mean we only have 4 years left?
Well, first of all, I don't have any reason to believe that such prophecies exist. First of all, it's certainly not in the Bible. And while people may feel like it, the proof is in the pudding. I certainly don't buy into that myself.
Robert's written in to say, hi, Dr. Grady. Some of President-elect Trump's comments doesn't seem Christian. What are your thoughts? He has especially quoted some crude comments about women. God bless you both. And that is from Robert.
I think we need to remember something. If you're going to be a genuine, committed Christian, you must believe that a man or a woman can change. There is no question whatsoever that in his earlier life, Trump was a much cruder person. After all, again, I don't think he had any relationship with Jesus Christ or Christianity. He was a rough, tough businessman who came out of construction. Construction is a rough, tough business. However, he has modified, and I think we need to look at where he is today, not where he was. And so let's just see how well he does from now on.
So one of the biggest things that he's going to be looking to deal with is the situation with the war that's going on. First of all, with Russia, we saw Kremlin President Vladimir Putin come out, and he actually delayed his speech basically to wait for the president to see who was going to become president. And he actually said to say that he had a lot of respect for President Trump as well because of the way that he was courageous during that assassination attempt, and he looks forward to speaking with him. And there were reports that Trump and Putin had spoken with each other, but Kremlin came out today saying no, they haven't spoken to each other. Trump has also been quoted as saying that Volodymyr Zelensky is more of an actor and he's very good at trying to gain funds and such things as well. So what do you think the situation is going to be between Russia, Ukraine, and obviously Trump in the middle?
Well, I'm not a prophet, but I must say that the election of Trump is going to change the world dramatically. The ripple effects are going to go all the way around the world. And while the 3 biggest things to watch are China, Russia, and Israel, it's going to change the dynamics in South America. It's going to change dynamics in Africa. So there's going to be a massive rippling effect across the world. as far as the war in the Ukraine, it was unnecessary to begin with. Trump had already worked out with Putin to prevent the war from occurring months before he lost the election. So I have every reason to believe that with diplomacy and certain guarantees, the Ukrainian war can end relatively soon. We have to remember that the Russians, and as you recall, I went to Russia 59 times. I went there over a period of 25 years. And the Russians love a strong man. When Trump ran the first time, all the Russians that I knew wanted to see Trump elected. And of course, they were very happy when he was. The reason that they have Vladimir Putin as their president at this time is not because he's a nice guy. He's not a nice guy. But they like him because he's a strong man. And when he says something, he means it. And if you stand in the way, he will force his way through. They look at Trump in a lot of the same characteristics. Not the bloodthirsty parts, but the strong parts. And they like Trump a great deal. And Putin will respect him. He had absolutely no respect for Biden or Harris whatsoever.
You've got friends, obviously, in Russia and Ukraine as well. What is their reactions to Trump's presidency? Do they feel that they're ready to end the war, do you think, in Russia, for example?
Well, I think that Russia would like to end the war, but, I mean, after all, they've had to even bring in North Korean mercenaries. So that shows just how badly this thing has gone. The Russians have lost upwards of perhaps 500,000 people when they expected to lose a few hundred. It is not popular to the common man in Russia. Yes, they support him because they support Russia and the concepts of getting the old Soviet Union back in terms of territory. But they don't like the losses that they're getting at all. You know, when the notices come back to the people that live in the flats that your son has died in the Ukraine, they're not happy at all.
We saw the nations coming together with Putin, the BRIC nations with, I think it's Brazil and China and India as well. They came together, and South Africa. They came together with Putin. Was this some sort of statement, do you think, from Putin to say, I'm not on my own and I've got backing, especially from large powers such as China?
Well, you have to remember that for all intents and purposes, BRICS is the communist countries of the world uniting, the major ones. Unfortunately, Brazil is sliding into deep communism right now because of Chinese influence. Much of Africa, and I would also point out South America, are sliding into deep communism. So that these nations getting together is simply more of an ideological union than one in which they like each other. But they all are basically in favor of a communist, very socialistic, communistic form of government, and they don't like us because of our capitalism.
I think something very close to our hearts at the moment, and obviously right now, is Israel, close to hearts at Revelation TV. So what do you think the outcome will be? You saw Benjamin Netanyahu congratulating Trump on his presidency. What do you think the outcome will be now that Trump is in power, and what's going to happen in the Middle East and in Israel?
Well, there's no question that Netanyahu is very happy with Trump being back in office because he's somebody he can work with. The lip service of the Biden administration, the holding back of arms, monies, etc., to help Israel, Trump will correct that. And we've already seen, and again, this is that ripple effect of it. We've already seen where Hamas has said, okay, we want to have a truce. Hezbollah, we want to have a truce. Putin, let's make a deal. I mean, we've already seen that, and he's not even elected yet because they know what he did in the first 4 years of his presidency, and they realize what he's capable of in the next 4.
This email's come in saying whether Trump is a Christian or not, God is using him to carry out his will as he used Saul and even Nebuchadnezzar. Shalom from Arnie. God bless America. Thank you very much indeed for that, Arnie. Some more emails from our dear viewers. This one's saying, Hi to you both. Can you please give me your views on the predestination? The Bible says, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. So we always thought it was for the whosoever. Thank you for your views, and God bless, from Alwyn and Gary.
I think that this term predestination has been unfortunately very much misunderstood in the Christian community. If you look carefully at what the Bible says, God does not predestine anyone to go to heaven or to go to hell. Jesus is quite specific about that in terms of you condemn yourself by not accepting the plan of salvation. And I think if you'll read the scriptures about predestination correctly, what it really says is, for those he did foreknow, because God knows everything. He knows my decision that, well, I'm going to become a Christian or not. But he doesn't have any influence on the fact that I do it voluntarily. And so the scripture really is talking about, for those he did foreknow would accept the plan of salvation. He did predestine that plan of salvation for them, but that we voluntarily choose it ourselves.
This one here is from Duncan in Inverness to say, Dear Cyrus and Dr. Grady, is there any reliable way of measuring the age of the Earth's material apart from relating them to the Bible? Blessings from Duncan. And he says, P.S. Great program. It's where to learn a great deal. Thank you, Duncan.
Well, thank you, Duncan. Appreciate that. The fact of the matter is, yes, even if we didn't have the Bible, I mean, literally didn't even have the Bible, science proves that the Earth and the universe are roughly 6,000 years old. We have talked about this before, and because we don't have the length of time for me to do an entire teaching on geochronometers, I would like to suggest that you can go to our website at creationworldview.org. There are articles there about geochronometers. We have videos on geochronometers. We have books as well that are available. And a geochronometer is an Earth time clock or a universe time clock. And today we have over 270 actual scientific proofs that the Earth and universe are young. Now, there are so many that I can only start a list, but my personal number one favorite is the decay of the Earth's magnetic field. It proves categorically that the Earth cannot be more than about 8,000 years old at the extreme and perfectly compatible with 6,000. But there are many, many others. The recession rate of the moon, heat loss of the Earth, heat loss of the moon, rotation rate of the sun, too much dust in the solar system, lumpy rings around our planets that have rings, barred spiral galaxies across the universe. Everywhere you look, I don't care whether it's in the Earth, on the Earth, near the Earth, in the solar system, in the galaxy, in the universe, we have hundreds of proofs that it is all young. And I just suggest that people start learning about them instead of accepting the religion of evolution, whose faith requires it to be old when there's no scientific proof that it is old.
This one here is written in to say, I have a question. The Bible makes it very clear, if we don't forgive others, then God will not forgive us. If we don't forgive, does this mean we will end up in hell?
Well, we are to forgive others. I would also point out that that's up to a point. You know, Jesus talked about how if somebody slaps you on the cheek, then you turn the other cheek and you give them a second chance. And may I ask, what did he say about if they slap you the second time? And what do you do the third time? You know, Christians are called to forgive. We serve a God of reconciliation. We attempt to achieve answers to problems that we have with other people in various ways, going to them first individually, see if we can't work it out, elders of the church, etc. But the fact of the matter is that Jesus said, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Unfortunately, too many people think the word meek means weak, and it does not. The word meek means so strong that you can be gentle. And so Christians are to be quite strong. Jesus was very strong. Do you think that when he took a whip in the temple, that he was a weak guy? But we are to try to deal with people without getting into violence or anything of that nature. But we're not to also then be hit and beaten into a pulp either. We will resist at that point, and justifiably. And so I simply point out, yes, we are absolutely supposed to work things out if we possibly can without any need of violence or anything else. And we should never be violent first. But we're also not to be beaten to death either.
Thank you, Grady. This one here is written in to say, I heard John Kilpatrick put a very convincing case for America being the mystery Babylon. Which is why America doesn't seem to be mentioned in end times. I'd love to know your opinion, please. It's just America is one of the Tarshish young lions. America was only a colonial nation for a very short time. Blessings.
Don't think we should get into whose colony we were either. But the fact of the matter is, someone asked about, well, there's a prophecy, that Trump will be the last president, whatever. There is no prophecy in the Bible of that. And the United States is not mentioned in the Bible directly. I mean, it didn't exist at the time the Bible was written, and people weren't even aware of it. Continents being there necessarily, although some ancient maps would indicate they might have understood it. And so I don't think that we are directly mentioned in any way when it comes to end-time prophecies. But what we are mentioned in is, at the end, there are going to be sheep nations and goat nations. And that's the one thing that concerns me, is that I want the United States to be a sheep nation and not a goat nation.
Satinda's written in to say, greetings. Is Dr. Grady familiar with the swarm of drones which invaded Langley Air Force Base in the United States last December 2023? Apparently, the Department of Defense has ruled out involvement from Russia or China due to the brazen way it was done. Furthermore, a year later, they still have no logical explanation as to what they were, some being as big as cars. For the record, I'm not suggesting their alien origin. I'd appreciate your thoughts, please, sir. Blessings from Satinda.
Oh, they're not alien at all. There were people behind that. And yes, I am aware of it. Unfortunately, I'm simply going to have to indict the current administration, which would not shoot down a Chinese balloon that went all the way across the United States. Yeah. Those drones should have been shot down immediately. And we have weapons that we can actually knock them out of the air. And so this was an unforgivable thing for the commander-in-chief of our military, which that's what the president is, to allow this kind of activity. But it was totally human, totally secular, but should never have been allowed.
This one's from Desiree in Northern Ireland. Thank you, Desiree, for writing. It's a lovely name. Hi, Cy and Dr. Grady. Apparently there is an asteroid called Apropos that is due to hit or pass close to the Earth in 2029. Can you please explain anything about it?
Well, actually, I hate to tell you this, but there's roughly 430 asteroids that have the possibility of hitting the Earth that we know of at this time, and there may be some that we don't know because we find them fairly frequently. They're so small, it's hard to see them. But sometimes we either see them directly or we see the effect of them that then tells us that they're there by gravitational effects and so on. But the fact of the matter is God's well aware of that, and I think that we need to remember that God's in control. Now, these asteroids are influenced by gravitation from our planets, by the moons around our planets, and specifically the moon around the Earth. Mm-hmm. And so the outer four planets, the gas giants as they're called, are called shepherding planets because they, through their gravitational effect, deflect these things from hitting us directly. And the moon, our moon, is the single last resort because its gravity and its mass, if it's in the right place, are our last defense against things like that. And of course, our military is also trying to devise plans that if we find one far enough away that we can change its trajectory ourselves. But I wouldn't be worried about it. God's in control. God tells us we're going to be here when he gets back. And I think you need to be comforted by that.
I want to ask you, Grady, what are your thoughts? And you might have heard about the floods that have been in eastern Spain just over a week or two ago in Valencia. Still so many people are missing, and it's just absolute tragedy of what's happened there. The whole city and the towns have been wiped out pretty much with the floods. What do you make out of all of that? What do you think is the cause?
totally natural. Uh, I don't mean to cry on the shoulder about what's happened to us versus what's happened in Spain. What has happened in Spain is terrible, and yes, I'm well aware of it. But of course, we had a couple of hurricanes this year that did tremendous damage in the United States. And my wife and I and our daughter and her family were all involved with these. But these are natural, normal events. You know, being so close to Italy yourself, in the last decade, we've seen Venice flooded and we've seen Venice go dry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
And so these are natural events. Now, they're tragic in their effect. I'm not making light at all of it. But what we're dealing with here are simply natural events. These are caused by the shifting from El Nino to La Nina in the South Pacific. This is because of volcanic activity around the world, which is unpredictable, but has a big effect on our weather. And this is due to sunspot activity. And so all these things, which are totally natural and man cannot in any way influence them whatsoever, we have to sit back and endure them. And remember that God's in charge of the weather. And he does use weather to both chastise and to bless. But whether that's what he's doing or not, these are natural events.
You've explained about the volcanic activity and that can affect the weather. Can you explain a little bit more? How does that work?
Well, I can do that fairly quickly. Volcanoes that erupt above sea level always cool the earth to some extent, such as Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines, which is quite close to the water, but above sea level. In 1 year, dropped the air temperature of the earth by 0.7 of a degree Celsius, 1.3 degrees Fahrenheit. And if there is, and there are plenty of underwater volcanoes, but they don't have a lot of effect unless they're relatively close to the surface. Such as a year and a half or so ago, we had the eruption near Tonga. And because that eruption was massive, underwater, but near the surface, it put millions of tons of moisture into the air, which will cause a temporary warming of the Earth's atmosphere that will last probably 5 to 10 years. Mm-hmm. And so volcanoes have a tremendous impact on history.
And the sunspots, how does that work?
Now, the sunspots generally go up and down in a regular 11-year cycle. However, the intensity and the number of sunspots in each cycle can be either low, moderate, or very high in number and in intensity. At the moment, we are at about what's called solar maximum, meaning that the sunspot activity in this particular cycle, sunspot cycle number 25, is stronger than the last cycle, but not a whole lot stronger. But we've had cycles before that were far stronger. Now, what happens with sunspot activity is that as sunspot activity increases, there's a slight warming trend on the Earth, and when they decrease, there's a slight cooling trend. But this is not the kind of heating and cooling that causes week-to-week weather changes or month-to-month weather changes. These are long-term things spread out over, again, roughly 11 years of increase, decrease, but they do contribute to things like volcanic activity or the shifting, again, of the El Nino, La Nina in the South Pacific. And all of these things are interacting. There's so many variables in weather and in general climate that you can't program them as much as we try. And so our models get better, but our models will never get perfect.
Glenda's written in to say, hi, Dr. Grady, do you think that net zero climate change will be proved to be a load of rubbish in the near future? It's making the nations who are involved financially worse off. And that's from Glenda.
Oh, Glenda, bless your heart and mind. I'd give you a hug if you're close enough. It's not just garbage. It's not just trash. It is utter garbage and utter trash. And again, humans cannot control the weather whatsoever. And anybody who thinks they can is fools.
Caroline's written in to say hi to you both. What should the attitude of Christians to be the reduction in the use of cash? So how should we react for the reduction in use of cash?
I think you should be against it. Because every time there's a reduction in the use of cash, it means that your finances are now going to be controlled by the government, and they can take it all in a second if we get to a point where they're trying to go. And so this deals with personal property, personal responsibility under God, who holds you personally accountable for your wise use of the resources that he has given to you. And so the more you give money into the control of the government, the more it becomes electronic, the more you are susceptible to being ruined instantly.
What do you make out of the way that we are being monitored today through our mobile phones and the activity and everything that we're doing? Everything can be tracked, and I guess they can use that in a positive light for security towards the nation, but also the big brother side of things as well, that the government are watching everything. What are your thoughts?
Oh, right now we know with absolute certainty that China can listen into any phone call in the United States or any other country for that matter. They've been able to hack into the security systems to the point that they can listen to, well, they could listen to a conversation between Trump and Putin. So there is no security anymore when it comes to telecommunication. What we have to do is just the best we can, be as secure as you can, take as many security measures as you possibly can, VPNs and things like that, of course, but anything else you can do. But the fact of the matter is, we're living in an age which is very Orwellian.
I mean, you got apps online, social media apps like TikTok were developed in China as well. And there was a lot of concern because of the amount of information and data that is being tracked and fed back into China as well. And there were some legislations that the US were quite strong with that. They wanted to ban the apps being used in the US, and all of a sudden that kind of frizzled out and we didn't hear anything more about it. So what do you make out of all this technology, hearing our conversations and such things?
Well, first of all, we do need to get rid of TikTok. Now, I would point out that they have done that in Canada. And there was a movement to do it here, mostly led by the conservatives. But again, the Biden administration has been so pro-China, so pro-communist, that they wouldn't do it. However, with Mr. Trump taking office, I think there's going to be another legislative movement to ban TikTok. And I would advise anybody in the world, if you're on TikTok, get off.
Very good. That's for any of our viewers who are doing any TikTok dancing right now. That's Grady's advice right there. Have you got a TikTok account, Grady? Are you doing any dancing on TikTok? No?
Never have, never will.
Very good. Now, for any of our viewers who are joining us, Grady, we talked earlier on about President Trump is now the new elect, and he's going to be taking over from Joe Biden as the new president of the United States. From a Christian perspective, Grady, why is it positive that Trump is now in power?
Well, again, there's going to be a strong move.
Okay, we've just lost him. We're going to get him back right now. It's a nice opportunity, though, to remind our viewers that we have a video on demand. We get so much information, so many questions coming into our live programs. So much information is shared by Dr. Grady, and that is available on our website, revelationtv.com/videos there as well. And another way that we use to evangelize on Revelation TV is we've now got a new Spanish channel, which we're so happy and proud about as well. And we just want to encourage our viewers as well. Please continue to pray for us, as our heart is to reach the Spanish-speaking community. There are so many ways of actually watching us on Freeview. You can watch us on Freeview channel 279. That's our new Spanish channel. It's on satellite as well, on Eutelsat Hotbird 13. It's also available on our website, revelaciontelevisión.com. You can do a search on Google as well. You can see the word revelation there is normally with the T instead of the C. So for the Spanish version, you've got the C instead of the T there as well. And also there's social media accounts, but also we've got an email address. So if there's any viewers who want to write into us and send us your feedback or anything else, they can write into our email address. And also there's a telephone number on screen as well that the viewers can call us on as well. And also we're on social media. We've got Instagram, but now we're uploading videos to our YouTube. And Howard was just sharing this morning of how our YouTube channel, just under 2 weeks now, we've got over 10,000 people and views on YouTube, going to a variety of different countries as well. And I'm just going to quickly inform you that just as we get Grady back on the line in a second. And it's amazing because God is blessing us in reaching, spreading the gospel in every single way. These are the countries that we're actually able to reach now on YouTube alone. So we've gone into Spain, United States, Mexico, Argentina, Colombia, Peru, Chile, Venezuela, Ecuador, Guatemala, Panama, Paraguay, El Salvador, Honduras, Dominican Republic, Bolivia, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Israel, that's amazing, Italy, Netherlands, Uruguay, Canada, Puerto Rico, Brazil, and Germany. So these are some of the countries that we've reached just in 2 weeks since we've started our channel, the Spanish channel, Revelación Televisión. And we've also done some of our programs, our in-house programs of the documentaries on Voices from Israel that Howard produced so many years ago. I think it's 1999, and also the Promise documentary as well. So we put that on our YouTube page just a few days ago, and we're getting thousands and thousands of views on that, which is absolutely incredible and a true blessing. So please continue to pray for us that we're able to reach the Spanish-speaking community. Let's see what else we've got in here. Viewers, please do continue to write in, and we'd love to share your thoughts and your comments on the program as well. Let's see what we have here. This viewer is writing saying, right-leaning UK GB channel regularly has weather and pro-climate change commentators on that. Also talk absolute rubbish. That's interesting to hear as well. But it's interesting, obviously, the mainstream media, but you've also got the facilities of watching or listening or doing your own research as well, which I think is so important because we see the way that the media is today, and we see the way that, for example, how they're reporting on the Middle East, and it's always sadly against Israel, and it's always pro-Palestine. You can see that clearly there is a certain agenda in the media and in the news as well. So we can always do our own research and really find out what really the information is, the correct information is that is going on in the world today as well. Let's see what else we've got here. What else? Let me have a look. Let's see. Okay. 1 second. Thanks to our God. Agreeing. Okay. Hi, Cyrus. Agreeing with you about the elections. We have been praying for a while. We are very concerned about the laws that will be passed in our country, allowing people to have assisted suicide. Sadly, so sadly, many woke views. Thank you very much for good advice, Paulette and Ken. Absolutely. I think we can always just pray for our governments as well, that they have some godly wisdom. And that's why I think it's important personally that we try and get some godly people in our governments and they have some influence. We saw Kamala Harris, who was trying to become president of the US, and some of her policies were very anti-Christian, in my personal opinion. Obviously, she was really pushing for the abortion rights and such things as well. And we can only pray that we can have some godly policies and godly foundations, because obviously this is what's important to run our nation and run our country as well. And it's also important for our children and the next generation and our futures. And by taking God out of our schools and everything else, it's just making the Christian voice even smaller. So it's important us as Christians that we just stand up and continue to blow that trumpet for the Christian voice right now. Let's see what else we've got coming in as well. Let's see. Hold on 1 second. Let's see. Can you please tell me the two God's kept the earth to continue? Let me see. 1 second. Oh. Okay, let's see what else we've got here. Can you tell me the two precepts God says if kept, then the earth will continue? Okay, we'll ask Grady that in a short moment. Carl, I think, is just getting him back on the line now. This viewer is saying, I personally don't. We were talking about smartphones earlier, saying personally I don't have a smartphone. So he's not worried too much if he's being traced or not. That is a concern by people, I think. But I guess if you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to worry about either. Because if you notice when you download an app on your mobile phone and you see first thing it asks you is, can we have access to your microphone? Can we have access to your location as well, your geolocation? And they've got to be careful as well, obviously, of who is watching that. But if you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to worry about either. But I think we've got Dr. Grady back on the line. Dr. Grady, sir, are you there?
I am. Remember, this is live at Revelation TV.
Tell me about it, Grady. Tell me about it. How is it? What happened? What do you think happened?
Satan didn't like what we were talking about.
All right, let's get into 17 minutes of the program to go. Robert's Renin say, hello, what do you think of the speculation of life on the planet Uranus because of oceans being discovered?
Well, there isn't life there. First of all, it's way too cold. Secondly, of course, this is the kind of speculation that evolutionists always want the public to think about. Same thing with the water on Ganymede, a moon. That evolutionists are experts at what is called the word meaning switch in logic. Logic is a science. It's not a philosophy. It's a science. And what they do is they say, well, there's water. Now, we all agree that water is necessary for life to exist, but what they do is they say, if there's water, there must be life, and that's not true. Scientifically, if there's water, but that does not equate to life. And so they're deceiving the public by doing these sorts of things. So whether it's a moon like Ganymede or whether it's a planet, it's irrelevant. Besides that, Uranus is a gas giant. And so the four outer gas giants don't have solid rock centers or anything like that. But there are moons around them that do. But no, this is just a bunch of hyperbole that evolutionists are trying to deceive people into believing.
This one here is from Michael. Say, good evening, Cyrus and Dr. Grady. Can you please tell me the two precepts God says, if kept, then the earth will continue? Thank you. I read this a long time ago in the King James Concordance Bible.
Well, first of all, I'm not quite sure what you're referring to directly. However, I would point out it sounds a lot like Genesis 8:22. After the flood, God promises that there will be seasons and that they will not cease until the Lord's return.
This one's from Linda and Wayne. I think, whether we read this one or not, you can correct me if I'm wrong, or maybe you are halfway through answering. This says, the climate change COP29 is on at the moment. I read in chapel last night, Genesis 8, followed by Romans 1:22. The most supposedly brains are being made fools. You explained the black holes beautifully last time. Thank you. From Linda and Wayne.
Well, thank you. Yeah, this meeting that they're having right now is such a joke. You know, these communist elitists, these environmental terrorists, etc., all get together, and they all convince each other that they're right, and then they try to get the world to follow them when there's no science to support their position. It is, again, all ideology. It is not science. And so this meeting in Baku at the moment is a ridiculous meeting, and we should pay no attention to it whatsoever.
This one's from Nick. Thank you, Nick, for writing in, saying, good evening, gents. Dr. Grady, do you agree with Bishop Ussher's calculation creation beginning in 404 BC? 4004 BC, sorry.
4004 BC. Bishop Ussher was perhaps the single greatest scholar in Europe at his time in the 1600s. He was an exceptional man. I've had the privilege of speaking not in his cathedral, but in his town. And while 4004 would be totally acceptable, I'm not saying that he was absolutely correct either. But it's a really good date. I mean, anything in the areas of 4000 BC is quite acceptable.
Dawn's written in to say, hi, Cyrus and Dr. Grady. May I ask, what knowledge does Grady have of the story in the stars as described in the Bible? Many thanks from Dawn.
I think maybe not story, but perhaps she's talking about the concept of the gospel in the stars. And of course, God did create what's called the Mazzaroth in the Hebrew, which is we might say, a zodiac. And the constellations in the skies, he says that he did put them there as for signs. And of course, when we take a look at Pisces, fisherman of men, Leo, the lion of Judah, we can see these symbologies that are there. However, Satan will always attempt to corrupt something that God has done. He cannot create, but he can counterfeit. He cannot create, but he can manipulate. And he took what was originally God's signs in the heavens of the gospel and corrupted them into what I refer to as the horoscope. That's with two R's and not one. And so that people have been led away by the satanic corruption of what was at one time, possibly, the signs in the heavens speaking of the gospel.
Okay. Let's see what else we have here. It says, Dr. Grady, it says in Genesis, God said everything was very good. Where was Satan then? Many thanks from JJ.
Satan was in heaven at that time. If you'll take a look at Ezekiel, God says that he created Satan perfect, but iniquity was found in him later. And so we also find in Ezekiel references that indicate he might have been in charge of worship in heaven at the time of the angels being created on day one. He was the covering cherub, meaning that he was located above the throne of God. And he was therefore able to see what God was doing by, looking at what God did on each of the 6 days of creation, the day of rest. And iniquity was found in him only after God had finished the creation. And when God said it was good and very good, and he rested, not because he was tired, but to give us a pattern of our lives, 6 days working in the natural, 1 day working in the supernatural. But this is when in Isaiah, we read of his rebellion against God, and he says, I am going to do the same thing. And God says, no, you're not. And he casts him to the ground, and he will then deceive Eve, and Adam will sin as a consequence. But that's after the creation week. And so for the first week, he is in heaven. But when he rebels, then God casts him out of heaven after the creation week is complete.
This one's from Jill to say, Dear Cyrus and Dr. Grady, how did Satan survive the flood?
Well, I hate to say this, but he's a supernatural being. He's not a physical being. And, of course, he wasn't walking on the earth and being inundated with the water from the flood. Remember, he is in the areas of the principalities and powers above the earth. He can go into heaven with God's permission and accuse the brethren, etc. So he was not influenced by the flood whatsoever.
This one here is from... let's see, Ali in Jersey, and she says, Ali in Jersey, not New Jersey, in a very beautiful star-filled sky and beautiful soon-to-be full moon. Thank you, Lord, for your wonderful creation 6,000 years ago. And she says, hi to you both. Great to see you as always. My question is, why did God allow the Holocaust? I've heard that some pastors believe that it allowed for the state of Israel to be reinstated, which was wonderful, despite the UK turning against the Balfour Declaration. If so, it was such a high price to pay for the men, women and children incarcerated in the extermination camps. I've been to Israel with Revelation TV and love it. God bless you and thank you so much. That's Ali in Jersey, not New Jersey.
Yes, I understand. Ali in Old Jersey. Fact of the matter is, I love what she's saying about a lot of that. The Holocaust, of course, was a terrible, terrible thing. And it wasn't just 6,000 Jews. It was 50 million other people as well. In one sense, though, this is because of the rebellion of the Jews not to go back to the land. Now, Herzl and some of the others in the 1800s and early 1900s were urging Jews to return to the land, and some were. There's never been a time when there wasn't at least some Jews in the land. And so the idea of the modern Jewish state has its roots in history going back into the 1800s. But there have always been some Jews in the land. There's never been a time when they were excluded entirely. And I'm glad you know about the Balfour Declaration too. And that was very, very important. And the problem there was that, well, unfortunately, the United Kingdom didn't keep that agreement and suffered dearly for it, losing the empire at the end of World War II and becoming the Commonwealth. But the Holocaust did have a purpose. God did allow that to literally incentivize the Jews to come back into that homeland. He was working in their benefit, even though it was a terrible, terrible tragedy.
This is a no name on this one. It says, "Hi, Dr. Grady. I recently saw a program where a Christian pastor said he and many others are using AI, artificial intelligence, in their ministry. Is this safe?"
Well, that's a sort of a thing with there was a cowboy in Oklahoma many years ago who said, there's some of my friends are for it and some of my friends are against it, and I stand with my friends. AI is simply a technology. AI is not intelligent, and the term artificial intelligence simply means that if you have enough computers and enough programmers, you can make people think that a machine has intelligence, but it doesn't. AI cannot do anything without a human writing the algorithms. And so you have to remember, it's the humans, not the machines. Unfortunately, that's why, as technology always is, technology is neither bad nor good. Technology is neutral. It's what you do with it that makes it good or bad. And yes, there are pastors that could use AI to the benefit of ministry. And there are those people that are not in ministry that could use it for very evil reasons. And so we have to look at, what does a person do? What is their motivation in using that technology? Not that the technology itself is good or bad.
I think it's an interesting question, actually, from that view, because obviously we know about ChatGPT as well, and the way that you can literally just write a couple of words in there and it'll write you a whole article, it'll write you a sermon, it'll write you a devotional or anything like that. But also at the same time, Grady, we've seen and we've done experiments here on Revelation TV where we've actually asked ChatGPT, who is Jesus Christ? And the response that we're receiving and response that we're seeing is there's no recognition of Jesus Christ, yet there is recognition of the other religions. So I think that is probably the danger that view was actually referring to. If pastors are trying to get their sermons from AI, artificial intelligence, ChatGPT and such things, and there's no emotional connection there or relationship with Jesus Christ.
I am not in favor of using it for sermons. Sorry for anybody that does. And we do not use it in Creation Worldview Ministries to do anything at this time either. But, again, it can be useful for a variety of things. And if somebody is using it in ministry, but not to write sermons, but maybe for some other reason in organizational things, it could be useful. But I said before, AI is not intelligence. And we use artificial intelligence to talk about a computer, not a human. The fact of the matter is, it will only do what a human programmer programs it to do. Therefore, because many of these people with these various social medias, with these various AI programs, and now there's many of them, they are anti-Christian. They are, pro-communist or pro-socialist or whatever. They're anti-religion. They're pro-environmental terrorists. And so their algorithms are written in such a way as to say that Christianity has no effect and that Jesus Christ was not the Savior of the world. And so you should never use them to try to promote Christianity, in the sense of these algorithms are never going to be positive for us.
I think we could use, well, there are ways. I think there's a fine line between artificial intelligence and the interpretation of what is artificial intelligence. And I think it's things like ChatGPT as well that is obviously gives information, but you can also use artificial intelligence in the environment of editing, for example, in the world of media that we're currently in, then we actually use different methods, and it's actually a useful, powerful tool because it's not changing the concept or the content that you're actually talking about, but it facilitates the design process and certain things as well. So it's exactly how you want to use this type of technology, Grady.
Well, you see, that's just it. I know that you've used it, and for your Spanish station,
Yes.
which I highly commend.
Yeah.
But again, it didn't write what you were saying.
Exactly.
It simply allowed the translation of what you were saying.
It's not giving any opinions.
And that's a very different thing. See, that's just it's a tool that can be used for a lot of good. But when it's generating the content, that's when you need a human supervision, like we're talking about. But to rely on it, to write a Christian sermon and have it done properly, I would question highly because, again, the algorithms and the people who write them.
I think my concern as well is the children who are using ChatGPT and artificial intelligence, because we're going to be coming to an age and generation where children and people are not even going to be able to use their own minds, their own brains, their own intelligence, because they're relying so much on this types of technology. They're asking any sort of question and write an essay, write this and write that. The whole system technology is doing it for them, and they're not actually using their own minds.
Well, that's just it. I hate to say this, but we need to go back to reading, writing, and arithmetic. This reliance on these things to do our thinking is the big problem. God holds us personally responsible for the resources he has given to us. One of the resources is our mind. And when we take a look at the Bible, particularly in the New Testament, dealing with 2 Corinthians 11, 2 Corinthians 10, it's a battle for the mind. And so if we get our mind right, then we'll do well. If we don't get our mind right, we won't do well. And we are held responsible by the Lord for using our minds well. And so we need to take every thought captive. We take every logical thing correctly, because we are using, if you'll excuse the expression, the algorithm of the Bible as our template for how we're to live our lives.
Dr. Grady, we want to say a huge thank you as well for joining us on the program tonight. And we want to encourage our viewers to check out Dr. Grady's website. You've got so much information on there. Tell our viewers about creationworldview.org.
Well, there you will find over 100 free articles on a wide variety of subjects, all of them written at a totally popular level, except for very few clearly marked. We also have today, we have 433 free short videos that you can watch to your heart's content on a wide variety of subjects. And we have a bookstore, both electronic download as well as in hard copies. We certainly would promote anybody going there to try to get a better handle on how to defend the Christian faith, as we are Christian apologists, and specifically from the standpoint of creation science. I mentioned it earlier in the program, we've got lots of geochronometers.
Bless you, Dr. Grady. Thank you so much as always. We love you. We appreciate you very much. A huge thank you to all our viewers. And don't forget, we've got our video on demand on our website, revelationtv.com/videos. I hope this program has been interesting. Take care. God bless. Until next time. See you soon. Bye-bye.